All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the STEERus Weekly Grind virtual coffee break. This is something we do every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Poonam Gole. I am the co founder of STEERus, and here we focus on personal and professional development for the generation next. I am thrilled to introduce today's guest, George Wrighster. He's an influential motivational speaker and also an author. He's contributed so much like amazing content for STEERus, and we are so honored to have his support here. So welcome, George. Thank you so much for joining us today. I made a quick short introduction, but please tell us more about yourself and all the wonderful work you do.
Well, I'm so happy to be here, and I love the work that STEERus is doing right now. And that was one of the things that attracted me to STEERus, and it's an amazing journey. Anytime that we can help young people in general, it's life changing, and just engaging with the content that we've been putting together, and engaging with you and the staff at STEERus, it's been amazing. So my journey is, I want to help unleash the potential in each and every person that I encounter, and help them come to a point that they focus and recognize what they want to do in life and how to accomplish that. So I consider myself really a transformational speaker rather than so much a motivational speaker, because I want to transform the lives of those that I impact.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And that's what we also aim to do here at STEERus. And, that's why we find this great alignment. You mentioned that you love working with young adults. You want to like help them and are passionate about, helping underserved kids and, the generation next, basically. So
Yeah.
tell me more about, where this passion comes from.
Well, back when I was growing up, I know that I searched for a mentor. I needed some engagement with someone just to give me direction. And sometimes, most of the time, I didn't have that. So I had to seek it out for myself. So as I began to, get older, and I started going through my own trials and tribulations, and I started going into, my profession, playing sports and engaging in business opportunities that came my way, I had to, doors start opening. Mentors start almost falling into my lap because of who I was and what I was doing. But I realized that there was a need. There was a need that some people needed that didn't have what I had as an opportunity, from an opportunity perspective. So I said, why don't I fill that need? And so I started going out to, different boys and girls clubs. I started traveling globally, internationally, Africa, speaking at different conferences and speaking with different orphanages and things of that nature. And I found that people were so welcoming. Mm-hmm. They wanted what I had to say, what I had to offer. And I realized it was the simple things that they needed, just answers to simple questions to help them stay on track or get on track for their journey.
Yeah, I can so relate to that, especially, coming to a completely new country, from India 10 years ago, and just, going through that struggle as well, the cultural shock and everything. And it's though it different journeys, but, that newness, or that, oh, if I only had somebody to answer these questions, that feeling.
Yes.
So that's totally relatable. And I definitely resonate with the idea of, helping others out with, seeking the same help, basically, same going through the same struggles. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So in these calls, we generally talk about future of work, right? So, embracing it, shaping it. And we ask our guests 5 questions. So I have these 5 burning questions for you today.
Oh, okay.
So the first question is, what do you think employees are struggling with right now?
I think that employees are struggling with work-life balance. One thing that COVID did teach us is that working from home wasn't a bad thing. I mean, the employees spend so much time away from home. If you live where I live in California, so travel from your home to a job Even if it's only 10 miles, can be a matter of hours because of traffic. So when you work from home, now you have more of an opportunity to, take 15, 20 minutes to gather yourself, get yourself together, set your workstation up and perform. And what we found out here is that employees have really soared in that area of what they've accomplished throughout their day, rather than to take an hour, hour and a half to get to work. Now they're exhausted mentally from the traffic. Now they have to wind down and find a place and, get to their functions. And then the same journey on the way back home. So work-life balance is very, very important especially for Generation Next.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And you're right, like COVID has really shown us that, how much work-life balance matters and how much it can really increase the productivity, and having that flexibility in life, because it's life in general, it's not.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah, that's definitely the trend we are seeing as well. So the second question is, what initiatives are you embracing to help students or employees to overcome these struggles that they are facing?
Listen, I think that what I'm about to say is probably one of the most critical things that can happen in our society, especially with Generation Next. But we can apply now, with our own generation, empowerment. Sometimes employers, they don't want to empower people because of fear of that they may lose that employee, fear that they may give too much information up to that employee. And so they want to micromanage rather than to empower the people to perform their jobs, trust them that they've hired the right individual for that job, and grow the company. At one point in time, early in my work life career, I worked for Federal Express. So it was in 1979 when I started with them. So I worked there for 15 years. But my first few months there, I worked in the hub part-time. But one of the things that happened impacted me and changed the way I saw business for the rest of my life. Fred Smith, who was the owner of FedEx, a guy some vice presidents, Jim Barksdale, Jim Perkins, every night before we started work, there was a mezzanine above where we all were gathering. And they would get above this, stand on top of this mezzanine, and they would feed us the vision. They told us what happened the night before with all the package count and everything that was going out globally. And then they fed us the vision for the day, where they were going for the next day, for the next week. And we all bought into it because we felt a part of it. We felt as though we were owners rather than workers of the company. Now that just totally took me to a whole nother dimension. Can you imagine how that impacted our work productivity for that night, every night? Changed my whole way of doing business when I started my own companies.
Wow. Yeah, that's a fantastic example. And it's what I see there is the trust, the acknowledgement and inclusivity, right? Like including your employees in your vision. Is so important, because that's the motivation, right? Like, why am I going to work today, right? Because there's a vision, there is something I'm working towards. Having that feeling is a game changer for sure.
Exactly.
Spoke like a true mindset coach, right? Like, I mean, these are some things that people don't realize, but they are so important in feeling a part of something bigger, right? And having that motivation to do your work every day, basically.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. So the third question for you is, which soft skill do you wish people had more?
Communication. We struggle with communication, even though we think we don't in most cases. Our society, we struggle with that. But to be a good communicator, you have to be a good listener.
Absolutely.
Generation X, they require it and they demand it. They want to be heard, and they want to know that their opinion and their voice matters.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing, even in our generation, we cried out for, but we didn't know how to, I should say, we weren't as bold and as vocal with demanding it as they are right now. And they're not letting go of it. They realize that they have power in their voice and they're going to use it. So why not help them use it correctly? Why not help them use it effectively? So it's a tool that it just works for everyone when we communicate better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that you said that, listening, active listening is such a big part of that, what communication is, because communication is a huge topic. And
Yes.
That's how it starts, like listening.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So next question is, what's your message to educators and trainers to better support the generation next?
Understand we're all different. Understand that we're all different. With those differences come value. And sometimes we don't think about that. We think, well, this person is different from me. I don't want to deal with that person. They're not like me. This person is a little different. So, it's going to be a little challenging. No, those differences bring value. If we really open up and give it a chance and we absorb that difference, because if we were all the same, the world would be the same. So let's embrace our differences. Let's embrace employees. Let's embrace students. And that's part of the struggle in the school system sometimes, that teachers and administrators don't embrace the differences in each child that's in that classroom, or that they have to engage with and that they have to communicate with. So, because we have a common language that we like to speak and we hear it a certain way, but some children don't communicate in that language well. I have a grandson. He is a child actor, very famous, very well known. But in the classroom, early on, he struggled in the classroom. But if you gave him lines, a script, or he was on set, it was like magic. But when you sat him down and you said, okay, what is this mathematical equation? How do we do this? How do we communicate this? He couldn't translate. It was difficult for him to translate. So it took him time to really format himself to a classroom environment or education. But artistically, he was brilliant. So, but now he had to learn how to balance both. And so it's the same thing that we have to learn as educators, as teachers, as trainers. Differences are great. We just have to learn how to manage them.
Yeah. And that's also such a great example that you gave, because it shows such contrast, right? Within the same individual, right? And we all have those different facets to us, like, and having that patience, empathy, and just the perspective, and curiosity. I think it's being more curious, like, okay, why, and what's going on in the person's mind, or why is that person behaving the way they are? Where are they coming from? Like, having that curiosity instead of shutting yourself off is
yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. You have all amazing examples. It really helps to understand it.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. And the last question is, what does the world need more of?
Well, I think that we've learned over the last few years as well, because of a lot of tragedies that are happening around the world, and the things that are really being brought to the forefront because of cameras and, people in society, is that compassion and empathy. It can be overstated that we have to learn to be compassionate for one another. We have to have more empathy for one another, and each individual as an individual, because our needs are different. Our upbringing is different. Our social environment is different. Our economic status is different. Everything is never one cookie cut function or one cookie cut method. We must learn to have more compassion and empathy for one another.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. This has been such a lovely conversation, George. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. So before we wrap up, are there any comments, anything that you'd like to add, for our listeners?
Okay. I'm going to leave you with 5 things you should never give away.
Ooh, nice.
Never. Now, I actually have 12, but we only have time. I'm going to give you 5.
Sure.
So one of the 5 things is, or I should say, I'm going to give you 5 powers that you have to recognize you have. The first one is the power of forgiveness. Remember, we are not perfect. We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. Forgive those that maybe offend you, that do things that you don't agree with, because there are going to be some times you're going to need that same forgiveness. 2, perseverance. You have the power of perseverance. Everything you put your hand to, you will prosper in it if you fight through the difficult times. Anybody can do it while it's easy. It's the most difficult times that we have to fight through and conquer that gets us to our goal. 3, you have the power of commitment. If you're going to do something, commit to it and put your whole heart into it. Because the more you commit to it, the more others will see your commitment and they'll latch on to what you have, what you're offering, and they'll want to be a part of it. 4, you have the power of choice. We all have choices. Our own choice either takes us on the right path or the wrong path. So make sure you choose wisely. And finally, 5th, you have the power of focus. Focusing on your goal and your intentions will lead you to success. And that doesn't mean you won't have some stumbling blocks along the way, but you will conquer and overcome them. And those are the 5 powers I'm going to give you for today.
That's fantastic. That's mind blowing. And yeah, those are great pointers for whoever is listening, going through a tough time, maybe, because these are very powerful. These are the 5 powers. Yes,
These are the
these are
5
the 5
powers.
powers. I love that. Right. Okay. So we wrap up today's call. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next week at the STEERus Weekly Grind virtual coffee break. Thank you very much, George, for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you for having me.